Another top free agent starter is now off the board. Are the Orioles running out of time to make this rotation better? We'll talk about that coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast.
You are Locked On Orioles, your daily Baltimore Orioles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, Orioles fans. Today is Thursday, January 15th, 2026, and welcome back into the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Connor Newcomb. And coming up on today's episode, we're going to talk about Ranger Suarez, somewhat surprisingly, signing a 5-year deal with the Boston Red Sox on Wednesday. The Orioles were certainly interested, but with Suarez gone, it really leaves Framber Valdez as the only top starter out there remaining in free agency. We'll talk about what lengths the Orioles should go to get Valdez and what they should do if he also signs elsewhere. Then a few more news and notes to get to. The international signing period opened up on Thursday. We'll talk about some of the guys the O's signed, but also kind of what this signing period really means for this Orioles organization. And finally, the O's added another depth catcher in Sam Huff. We'll talk about him at the end of the show as well. But that's all coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast. But first, just want to thank you for making Locked On Orioles your first listen of the day. And thank you for making the Locked On Podcast Network now the #1 sports podcast network. So let's start today with honestly some news that made me kind of sad on Wednesday, and that is it was reported that Ranger Suarez, the free agent left-handed starting pitcher, had signed a 5-year, $130 million deal with the Boston Red Sox. Now, this was bad for the Orioles for two reasons. One, they were interested in Ranger Suarez. He was one of the top starters remaining. He was actually personally my #1 free agent starter remaining, and he's pretty good. Number two is, not only did he not sign in Baltimore, he signed with a division rival in Boston. And with that signing, the Red Sox, who already had a good rotation, they had Garrett Crochet, they'd already traded for Sonny Gray, they had a lot of depth behind them. With the addition of Suarez, they are now the #1 projected starting rotation for 2026 at FanGraphs. That's not good for the O's when a division rival has the best rotation in baseball, and it's somewhat because they got a guy you could have also signed. So let's talk about that, right? The Orioles were certainly involved. They were interested. We heard tons of reporting from different spaces that they were intrigued with Ranger Suarez and were in at least negotiations with him. Now, Ranger Suarez was one of 5 guys I kind of put in the top tier of free agent starting pitchers available this offseason. He is the 4th of the 5 to sign, leaving Framber Valdez the only one out there. And with the other 3 who have signed already, I talked after each of those signings about how, it was disappointing those guys weren't Orioles, but I totally understood why they signed with the teams they did and not with Baltimore, and really didn't hold it against Mike Elias and David Rubenstein in the front office. They didn't get those other 3 guys, right? Dylan Cease, #1 on my list, signed back in November for 7 years, $210 million with the Blue Jays. I love Dylan Cease, but Toronto basically jumped the market, overpaid early, and got Cease. They're a team that was 2 outs away from winning the World Series. You could see why he wanted to play there. And I totally got why the Blue Jays kind of beat the market on that one. Tatsuya Imai, he was #2 on my list. Well, teams were not as high on Imai as I was and other people in the public were, because his market collapsed and he signed a 3-year, $60-ish million deal with the Astros with an opt-out after year 1. If there are really those big of questions about Tatsuya Imai as his market showed, you do not want to sign that guy, pay the extra money for the posting fee, and then have him opt out and leave after 1 season. That wasn't going to be a good fit for the Orioles. And similarly, with Michael King signing a deal with the Padres, a 3-year deal that had an opt-out after year 1 and after year 2, it was kind of the same thing, where King went back to San Diego, where he pitched the last 2 years because he was coming off kind of an injury-plagued 2025, wanted to rebuild his value and re-enter the market next year. You couldn't even slap the qualifying offer on him if he came for 1 year and opted out. So he'll be a free agent next year, and the Padres, as I talked about, that was going to be the only team that could offer King that deal that he wanted, and so he took it. So while it was disappointing the Orioles didn't get any of those 3 guys, I was like, okay, Now, if there's going to be regular contracts handed out, the Orioles should be all over it. And unfortunately, 5 years, 130, pretty regular contract. No opt-outs in this Ranger Suarez deal. And it just seems like the Orioles got outbid by the Red Sox on Ranger Suarez. Now, I had Suarez number 3 on my free agent starting pitcher wish list. 30-year-old lefty had a 3.2 ERA in 157 innings last year. He, has some of the best job of avoiding hard contact, one of the lowest hard hit rates in baseball. There are some issues. He's had ongoing back issues. That's why 157 innings last year was a career high for Suarez. His fastball also sits at around 90 miles an hour at this point. It was 93 a couple of years ago. Now, he's still been good at 90, but you worry that as he goes into his 30s, does he lose more velo? Does he drop to 88? And it just becomes so hard if you're throwing below 90 to have success as a big league pitcher. You have to be a big-time outlier. And I think Suarez is, but you're totally in your right if you think he's not going to be an outlier and things are going to get worse. For me, though, those reasons are why I wouldn't be willing to offer Ranger Suarez 7 years. The reporting early in the offseason was that he wanted 7 years. Those reasons are why I didn't think Suarez was worth the $210 million that Dylan Cease got. But when the contract is 5 years for 130, that to me feels like a pretty fair deal for Ranger Suarez. I don't even feel like, the Red Sox way overpaid, or, the Red Sox gave him way more years than anyone else should, and that's why they got him. They seemingly gave him a fairly market level deal. And it's frankly annoying that the Orioles didn't beat it, because when you look at the two rotations, the Orioles have a greater need than the Red Sox do to get a starting pitcher in free agency like Ranger Suarez. And with the big Pete Alonso deal and other moves, the Orioles have proven this offseason they're in a different level of spending and are ready to spend. And at least it proved to me they're willing to spend on a starting pitcher as well, although they still have yet to do it, despite giving out the big Pete Alonso deal. And it's frustrating, right? Like maybe the Orioles were worried enough about those issues with the back and the velo. They didn't want to go past 4 years. We know they didn't want to go past 4 years for Corbin Burns last offseason. They offered him 4 years, $180 million, bigger than this deal. But that 5th year is maybe that's kind of the ledge for them. But I mean, this is only $26 million per year that Suarez is making. That's not bad at all for a good starting pitcher for 5 seasons. And, yes, you worry, is 34-year-old Ranger Suarez going to be good for $26 million a year? Who knows? But it's not like this contract takes him to age 40. It takes him to age 35. I could totally see Ranger Suarez still being a productive, good, number 3 to 4 starter at age 35, especially because he's already good throwing 90 miles an hour. That would not surprise me at all. And everything on Ranger Suarez stat-wise tells you he's worth a 5-year, $135 million deal. So if you're asking Connor, would you have beaten that contract? Like, would I have given him 5 years, 135? Absolutely. I would have gone, 5 years, 140 something even, or more to beat that offer if I was the Orioles and he was really my number one guy. So maybe, they had Valdez higher on their board, and that's completely possible. But I just hope the Orioles are not getting too stingy again with years, right? It seems like we've gotten to the point, especially after the Alonso contract, that the money is not a big thing. And David Rubenstein has said that over and over and over again. But the years could still be a thing. And years for a pitcher, very different than giving out long-term years to a hitter. Yes, they gave out 5 years to a first baseman in his 30s. That's risky. Way less risky than giving out 5 years to a starting pitcher in his 30s. And maybe that 4 to 5 years is the cutoff for the Orioles. And maybe, I talked about, hey, the O's should offer Suarez and Valdez each 4 years, $120 million. And whoever says yes first, just take it. Maybe they did that, and Suarez wanted the 5th year. The Red Sox were the team to offer it, even for less money per year, but more money total. And that's the deal that Suarez took. Like, that is totally possible here as well. Now, is 4 years, 120 going to do it for Framber Valdez? Maybe. There's been some reporting that he might be willing to take a shorter deal. But if you're looking in free agency, your eggs are kind of now all in the Framber Valdez basket, right? The Mets are still right there looking for a pitcher. The Phillies might want someone to replace Ranger Suarez. I think the Giants still certainly need another starter. You've got the D-backs and the Padres potentially in the mix for those top starters. There's still a good handful of teams looking, and there's just one guy remaining in that group. Now, a couple other interesting guys are going to sign, like Zach Gallen. There's a lot of back and forth on where he stands, and someone who's going to get Gallen is not going to then be in the market for Valdez as well. but there might be a bidding war here if this is your guy. And even though the Orioles are operating in a different stratosphere now, you still don't want to be getting into giant bidding wars on these teams, right? And I think the bigger question now becomes, okay, what if the Orioles don't get Framber Valdez? Because now that he's the only one of that top 5 left, and there's still more teams than the O's that want another starter, it's very, very plausible that Framber Valdez is not an Oriole and they miss on all of the top 5. So if you're watching here on the Locked On Orioles YouTube channel, I'm going to put up my starting pitching free agency and trade spreadsheet that I've been working with this offseason. You can see in the top left, Framber Valdez, the only one remaining of the top 5. Over on the right, you still have among my mid-rotation guys, number 2, Chris Bassitt, number 3, Zach Gallen. I've argued that if they also get Bassitt or Gallen, it makes the rotation better than it is now. It's certainly an upgrade. Bassitt might be just, I don't know, overkill when you already have Dean Kramer and Zach Eflin, kind of similar pitchers. Gallen's a little bit different because he's coming off a worse year, but he's been so much better a couple of years ago, has a higher ceiling than a guy like Chris Bassitt. So you can almost put Gallen potentially into a different category. Some people are down for Gallen being a good addition. I don't know. You have to give him a draft pick. He's looked pretty bad recently. I'm kind of out on Gallen. He's only number 3 on this list because if you just compare him to the other guys on there, the rest of the guys on there, Justin Verlander, Lucas Giolito, Zach Littell, Nick Martinez, I mean, are they helpful? Sure. But at this point, again, when you have Eflin and Kramer, I'm not sure any of those guys make you a lot better. So really what you're doing is moving to the trade list. And, you know, you can pivot to a trade. You still have Kobe Mayo. You made the trade for Shane Baz. You didn't give him up. But look at my trade list, right? Like Sandy Alcantara, number 3 on there. Well, the Marlins have now traded Edward Cabrera to the Cubs and Ryan Weathers to the Yankees. If they're trading away 2 starters, a Marlins team that was only a couple games under 500 last season, I don't think they're going to want to get rid of their entire rotation in a year where they could maybe compete in 2026 when things break right. I think they're probably going to keep Sandy at this point. I can't see them trading 3 starters in one offseason. He might come off the board. I mean, I still think for the right price, Joe Ryan and Pablo Lopez in Minnesota, number 2 and 4 on my list, are available. But the Twins have been very open about this from their front office, saying from the beginning of the offseason, we are not planning, we do not want to trade Ryan and Lopez. We want them here. We want to compete in 2026. Could that change if they get the right offer? Absolutely. But they've also shown up in no trade rumors whatsoever. So really your only top trade guy that I think is available is Freddie Peralta. He's got 1 year left. He seemingly is coming up in more and more rumors as the offseason goes on. I would say for the first time, I feel that's more than likely he will be dealt. The Yankees are still involved, I think, even after getting Ryan Weathers. But, you know, you get a Kobe Mayo deal. Peralta, apparently, you know, the Brewers want major league ready starting pitching, you know, a Mayo with a Cade Povich and if you have to throw in a Trey Gibson type, that would be really tough for a 1 year guy. But if you can extend Freddie Peralta, it makes it more worth it. Otherwise, the other trade options on my list that I think are acceptable that make the O's better for one more addition, Nick Pivetta in San Diego, Chris Bubich in Kansas City, and Mackenzie Gore in Washington would be the other 3 that are certainly a step down from Peralta, but make you better. The other guys, you know, that I have here, David Peterson, Kodai Senga, Mitch Keller, Brady Singer, are they solid? Yeah, but again, maybe some of them would make the O's rotation a little bit better, you know, upgrading over Eflin or Kramer or whomever, but I don't think it's worth it to give up prospects to make a minimal upgrade like that at this point. So I really do think the O's are still in on Framber, like Andy Kusko's reporting, you know, Ken Rosenthal's reporting is still that the Orioles are in on Framber Valdez, but time is kind of ticking right now. And their rotation at the moment, it's Bradish, Rogers, Baz, Kramer, Eflin. It's serviceable, but it's projected 18th at FanGraphs right now. You add Framber, you jump to 12th. 12th makes me feel a whole lot better than 18th, because if you're the 12th best team in the major leagues, that's a playoff team. 18th, not so much, and that is a big difference about where the Orioles need to be with an offense that looks really, really good and projects really well at this moment. So that's the Ranger news. It's unfortunate. It's double unfortunate. The O's will be facing him in Boston, but they move on from here and hopefully will still look to add another arm. They were certainly adding players, though, here today. Just not guys we'll see in the major leagues very soon, but international free agents and amateur players who are joining the pro ranks, and the Orioles are finally being involved in that under Mike Elias, and this was their best international class yet. But let's do a little historical dive on how things have changed under Mike Elias. That is coming up next. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are here, and FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. Every game day during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action. Because right now, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost pack waiting for them inside the app. Every game day, you'll see a pack loaded with multiple profit boosts you can apply to the bets you like. And every play feels bigger. The boosts make your bets feel that way too. You make your picks, then you apply your profit boosts to go after even bigger payouts while the playoffs get rolling. So visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day. So today, January 15th, is the start of the 2026 International Amateur Free Agent signing period. Something the Orioles weren't really involved in for a while, but now is a big part of how they operate. We'll talk about some of the players the Orioles got, but first I want to thank you for making Locked On Orioles your first listen of the day. You already live your team every day. Now you can take it up a level and go ad-free. Join the Everydayer Club today and get Locked On Orioles with no interruptions, members-only Discord access, and more, all for just $5 per month or $50 per year. Just go to lockedonorioles.supercast.com or check the link in the show notes to learn more about joining the Everydayer Club. So the international signing period opened up today, and the Orioles, I believe it looks like, signed 10 players as of this recording here on Thursday, as the signing period has opened. This is the signing period where teenage players from most of the Dominican Republic, but also any country, guys are eligible, generally from across the world. Again, you'll see, some Colombian players and Venezuelan players and some Cuban players who potentially defect and get signed here. Sometimes you'll have guys coming over from Australia and, a couple times a year, some other European countries. Generally, though, this is the time where you are finding teenage players that you're dreaming on. They're not going to be in the big leagues for a while. Each team has a specific amount of money, of international bonus pool money they can spend. You can spread it out to 30 players. You can give 5 players all a big sum of money. You can spend it really any way that you like. That's some of the newer rules that have come in recently. And for the Orioles, they set a new record, giving over $1 million of a signing bonus to 4 different players. And that's not something the O's have done in the past. But Jose Luis Acevedo is the top prize, a teenage shortstop out of the Dominican Republic. Orioles gave him a new team record $2.3 million signing bonus. They also gave out some big money to outfielder Ariel Roque, outfielder Pedro Gomez, and outfielder Gabriel Rosario. And to add to that, Andre Hidalgo, a left-handed pitcher from the Dominican Republic who they gave just over $600,000 to, set the new Orioles record for money they've given to a pitcher in these international free agent classes. So they're still spending the same amount of money, but they used to spread it out to, 15, 20 plus players. They signed 10 guys this time. I think that's the lowest number they've signed under Mike Elias, because they're doing things a little bit differently. Now, to hear coverage on all the names, who they are, what kind of prospects they are, check out Orioles on the Verge, check out Baseball America, check out Fangraphs. They're going to have much better coverage over there than I'm going to have here. I want to talk about why this is significant, because under Peter Angelos and under John Angelos, previous ownership, the Orioles were philosophically opposed to this international free agent prospect. Now, that take has some merit because it's all very slimy. Essentially how this works, and most of it is not above board, there are teams making handshake deals with 13 and 14-year-olds that they are scouting in, mostly the Dominican Republic before these guys are even eligible to sign. You're not eligible to sign until you're 16 years old. So 2 or 3 years before the year you're eligible to sign, you've got some sort of handshake deal. Generally, a lot of money is going to the trainers of these kids as well, not fully going to them and their families. And then you have teams that sometimes will back out of deals with no repercussions because they're handshake deals that can't be official until the period opens on the 15th. If you wonder why the morning of the 15th, every signing is announced, or why places are reporting on these signings weeks and months before the day even happens, is because they've been in place for a long time. Is it wrong? Yes. Is it how every team operates in this space? Yes, it is. It's just kind of the accepted nature of the system, even though it's not what the rules say that it should be. Now, for the Orioles, what that meant is, I don't know what the full meaning behind Angelos having that stance, but it meant they fell behind literally every other team. So when Mike Elias came in November of 2018, he brought Kobe Perez along with him from the Astros to be his director of international scouting. The goal was to change that, really. And with handshake deals happening 2 to 3 years in advance, it takes a long time to just catch up to where other teams are in this process. And really, because you're 2 to 3 years behind, 2021 became the first class where the Orioles could really compete with any other team, the first class you could really judge. And who did they sign in that class? A young catcher named Samuel Basallo got $1.3 million from the Orioles in that class. And now he has become the first of the international signings under Mike Elias to make it to the big leagues. And he's also got himself an 8-year extension and is arguably a top 3 prospect in Major League Baseball at this moment. Now, again, you never know with these players, right? In that same year as Basallo, they gave shortstop Michael Hernandez $1.2 million. He was seen to be the best player the Orioles signed that year. He finally got to high A last year at age 21 and had a 76 WRC plus in high A. He's probably not going to make it. So you never know. But the question is, how has this been working out, right? The Orioles have finally been in this market since 2018. They've finally been able to compete since 2021. So even though Basallo is the only one in the big leagues, how does the system look right now? The thing that's great is it has caught up to some of the best teams doing this in the majors. And it helps that the Astros were one of the best teams in the international market. Again, Mike Elias and a lot of this front office coming from Houston, including Kobe Perez, who leads this attack, have done it as well. So Baseball America, John Mioli, prospect rankings for the Orioles system came out last week. The Orioles have 8 prospects in their top 30 who were international signings by the O's. Luis De Leon, number 5 prospect, 22-year-old lefty. He was a $30,000 signing also late in that 2021 period. Now he's throwing 98 with crazy stuff from the left side, getting Framber Valdez comps. Number 7 prospect is 18-year-old right-handed pitcher Esteban Mejia. He signed for $150,000 in 2024. He's throwing 100 now with a huge ceiling. Number 11 prospect is 20-year-old second baseman Aron Estrada, another $150,000 signing in 2022. Has made it up to Double-A, makes a ton of contact, fun player to watch. Number 16 prospect, 20-year-old outfielder Tomas Sosa. He was a $400,000 signing in the 2022 class, has huge power from the left side. He's also in Double-A. Your number 19 prospect, 20-year-old outfielder Jordan Sanchez, $450,000 signing out of Cuba in 2023. He made it to Delmarva last year with awesome offensive stats. Number 24 prospect, 18-year-old outfitter Steven Martinez. He was the biggest money guy. He was a $950,000 bonus in 2024. Hits the ball hard, got to Delmarva last year. Number 25 prospect is 19-year-old infielder Joshua Lorenzo. $500,000 signing bonus in 2023. Gets on base a ton, also got to Delmarva last year. And number 30 prospect is 19-year-old right-handed pitcher Keeler Morphe. He got $200,000 in 2023. Kind of had a lost season in 2025 with command issues and injuries, but he throws 99 with electric stuff, sometimes doesn't know where it's going. But these are all guys who are in your top 30, and you could absolutely see being big leaguers with the Orioles one day or being big parts of trade packages to go to other teams that help the Orioles acquire major leaguers. They never really had something like this. I took a look at the FanGraphs top 20. So it wasn't top 30, but FanGraphs top 20 Orioles prospects from the 2018 season. So this is before Elias was hired in November of 2018. The only guy on that list who was an Orioles international signing, because they signed a couple of these players here and there every year. They just didn't compete in it like other teams did. Jomar Reyes, number 20 prospect, infielder, was the only one who was an O's international signing. He was 20th on the list and he never made the big leagues. That was it. And even the guys I named, none of these guys who were in the top 30 list even got $1 million in their signing bonus. Orioles just gave 2.3 to a player. Now, obviously, Basallo is number 1 on the list. He got 1.3, but I didn't count him because he, of course, is in the big leagues. But with Basallo, that is 9 players in your top 30 right now who were international signings by the Orioles. The Astros, in their most recent top 30, they have 8. The Astros are the team that have always done it as good or better than anyone else. The Orioles have finally caught up to where they need to be, right? This, I think, is the most international prospects they've had in their top 30 in their system at any time. Now, when you participate, you just have more bites at the apple to get good players. And sometimes there's going to be Michael Hernandez's, who you give $1.2 million and they don't do anything. And sometimes you're going to find a Luis De Leon. You give $30,000 and he's your second best pitching prospect. And Kobe Perez is saying on Thursday that he wouldn't be surprised if De Leon debuts at some point late in the 2026 season for the Orioles. Like, it's a bit of a crapshoot. There's scouting involved, but these kids are 14, 15, 16 years old, haven't even fully developed. It's weird. It's a weird system. But if you participate, you stop blocking yourself from a giant pool of talented players. Is the system sleazy? Is it broken? Does it need to be fixed? Absolutely yes to all of those things. But that's where we are in baseball right now. It's a little bit of a don't hate the player, hate the game situation in international scouting right now. And at the very least, the O's, to make their whole team and their organization better, have caught up with the rest of the league and how they operate here. And while I have mixed feelings about the whole process, it is nice to see the Orioles going out and finding another way, finally, to get more good baseball players. And I think it will be really good for them moving forward that they had this big class this year and that players can see Samuel Basallo signed, made it all the way to the big leagues, and got the big money extension with the Orioles through this process. Makes other players see, wow, someone finally did it. I could be the next one to do it. That probably helps with these signings as well. Speaking of signings on the minor league level, the O's made one on Thursday. Catcher Sam Huff. We'll talk about him to finish off the show coming up next. So before we go, I wanted to talk about catcher Sam Huff, who the Orioles signed to a minor league deal with an invite to big league spring training on Thursday. Huff is a 28-year-old right-handed catcher, actually turned 28 on Wednesday, so happy birthday to him. He was a seventh-round pick out of high school by the Texas Rangers back in 2016. Huff debuted with the Rangers in 2020 in the shortened COVID season, even though he had never played a minor league game above high A, and he hit .355 with 3 homers in his 10 games he played in late in the year in 2020, but had knee surgery in 2021, missed a chunk of the season, finally played in AA and AAA, but didn't get back to the big leagues that year. Returned to Texas in 2022 in the major leagues, played 44 games as kind of the third catcher, had a 92 WRC plus and 132 plate appearances, a lot of strikeouts, graded out as a good framer, kind of bad at blocking, a solid thrower. And then in the last 3 seasons, he's played 44 big league games combined from 2023 to 25. 2 years with the Rangers. Then the Giants claimed him off waivers from the Rangers in January of 2025. He played 20 games for the Giants last season. He was great in AAA in 2023. That's where he spent most of the last 3 seasons, but has been kind of a bad hitter there too the last couple years. In terms of defensive catcher, he's solid. Framing's always been pretty good. Blocking's been bad to okay. The arm has been kind of in the okay range. He grades out as kind of a solid defensive catcher. There's still some tools in his bat. Like, the batted ball data is there. Now, he only had 103 AAA plate appearances in 2025 because he spent some time injured and spent some time as the taxi squad catcher for the Giants. But in that time, he posted a 53% hard hit rate with a 13% barrel rate and showed off a 73.6 mile per hour bat speed rating. Those are all really, really good for underlying data. The issue is he swings and misses a ton. He had a 35% strikeout rate in AAA. That's kind of where his strikeout rate's been in the big leagues, right? It's a 98 big league games. He does have a 103 WRC plus, so he's a little above average, but that's propped up by a lot of power, also with a lot of strikeouts. I think it was Dan Sanchez call him essentially the light version of Gary Sanchez. It's like that profile, huge power, some good defensive cues, but also some definite flaws. Obviously was not the same player Sanchez was in the big leagues, but Huff, in the minors with the Rangers, was a pretty well-regarded catching prospect. Maybe not to the level Sanchez was, but was up there as a really good catching prospect. Just never developed into the offensive player that Sanchez was. But it's good depth to have, right? He will be the veteran catcher in AAA Norfolk to begin the year as long as Basallo and Rutschman are healthy. We've talked about the Orioles carrying 3 catchers on the big league roster. I think if they're going to do that, it's the third catcher is going to be someone with minor league options. Unfortunately, Huff is out of minor league options, so he doesn't fit that mold. So it's more likely they needed a veteran at AAA. He will be that guy, you would think, unless he has an opt-out in his contract. But at this point, if you were ranking catchers in the system to help the O's in 2025, I'd still put him third. Obviously Adley and Basayo are 1 and 2, but I'd put Huff above Maverick Handley. He just has more time in the big leagues and more success in the big leagues than Handley did when he debuted in 2025. Handley probably a better defensive catcher. Huff definitely a better hitter with a higher ceiling, especially with the power, but he can hold his own defensively. So I do think where Sam Huff fits in is he'll be in big league spring training. He'll go to AAA to begin the year. And, if Adley or Samuel Basayo get hurt at any point, Huff becomes that first guy you call up to be the backup behind whichever of those two guys is still healthy at that point. As the Orioles learned last year when they used 7+ catchers, you can never have enough pitching depth. You can also never have enough catching depth in your system. Sam Huff will add to that. That'll do it for today's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. I want to thank the everydayers out there as well. And if you never miss an episode, the Everydayer Club, that's built for you. You can get Locked On Orioles ad-free, plus members-only Discord access and more. Just head to lockedonorioles.supercast.com. Links in the show notes to join the Everydayer Club. I'm pretty sure I will more than likely be back tomorrow. I know kind of weird posting time here on Thursday, going to be weird posting time again on Friday just because of scheduling, but I think we're going to have an episode back with you tomorrow. We got some more news and notes to talk about. The Orioles claimed left-handed pitcher Jose Suarez off waivers. They DFA'd Marco Luciano. We'll talk about that. We have a ton of Masson news to get to. The Nats are gone. The Orioles are hiring some new broadcasters, fun stuff about spring training games, and a couple other pieces of news and notes like Big Christmas clearing waivers. We'll get to that and any other breaking news coming up on tomorrow's episode. Until then, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the Locked On Orioles YouTube channel. If you're a listener, give a follow, subscribe to the show. 5-star rating and a review always helps on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And if you have thoughts about the show, want to talk some ball, ask a mailbag question, whatever it may be, you can always email me, lockedonorioles@gmail.com. I'm back on Friday. Until then, I'm Connor Newcomb, and this has been the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.